Hi, I'm Eva and I've read a total of 9 books in the last 2 months. I'm trying to get a hang of reading more for this channel, but we're getting there. If you want to hear which books completely surprised me and which ones are not worth the hype in my opinion, get cozy and I'll tell you all about my thoughts and feelings about the books I've read. I just love how I always have my brain fog days on the days that I really want to film like a talking video. And I'm sitting here trying to explain to you what all of these books are about, and I'm just rambling and not having any clear thoughts at all. So this is my second try recording this video, and hopefully my brain fog has cleared up a little bit. Let's start off with the first book that I've read in September. That is Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. I think many people have heard of this book already, and you have probably heard of this book already as well, but I'm gonna tell you again. This is a story set in the UK, in London, about two socialites being in a very toxic relationship, them being always reported on in the news and in magazines. Not on the news, no, not on the news, but in magazines and stuff like that. And it's basically like Gossip Girl, but set in the UK. It's about Magnolia and BJ and their very toxic relationships. It also has this very big friend group, which I really enjoyed. And there are always like these text messages. This book was so incredibly emotional. Like my emotions were everywhere when reading this. And I've also vlogged my whole experience reading this book. I'll link the video somewhere. I don't know. But yeah, this was honestly a blast to me. It didn't get the full 5-star rating for me because I had a few little small tiny problems with it. I was able to relate to them in many ways, but some ways, like when you're not rich, you just can't relate. But it still got a 4.75 stars from me. And in my head, it's still like one of my all-time favorite books, even though it didn't get 5 stars. And then the second book that I've read is Crave by Tracy Wolff. I've actually listened to the audiobook of this one, and this is a YA vampire story. It's about this girl who has lost her mother and father and has been sent to live with her uncle. And her uncle is the head of this academy, and this academy is like a very spooky academy from the setting. Like it's very gothic and very eerie, and after a while she learns that the boarding school is not as it seems. It's filled with vampires and other fantastical beasts, werewolves and all of that stuff, and there's also like a very hot love interest. It was a bit cringy at times, this book, I'm not gonna lie, but it was still a very fun and entertaining read. It was exactly what I was craving at the moment, like just something light and fluffy and something to get through very easily. And I've rated that one 3 stars. Next we have Daisy Hates by Jessa Hastings, which is the second book in the Magnolia Parks series, but also like the first book in the Daisy Hates. I don't know, it's kind of a weird combo with these books, but it's basically the second Magnolia Parks book. If I hadn't been on vacation for this one, I would have loved this even more than the Magnolia Parks book, and I'm really sure that it would have gotten 5 stars from me. But my reading experience reading this book wasn't completely perfect because I was on vacation with 6 other friends. We were 7 in total, and that was kind of like a stressful situation for me. Like I was a little bit all over the place during that vacation because it was just a lot living with this many people in such a tiny space, because we didn't have like a huge house, we had just like a very tiny house. So I basically had never really time for myself. It really tainted my experience reading this book a little bit, but it was still like such a great time to read this on the beach. It got focused a little bit more on like the gangsters that are part of the friend group in Magnolia Parks. And you only hear in Magnolia Parks that there are some gang lords, but you never really hear anything about their business or anything. And in this book, like we get one POV, not from a friend of Magnolia's friend group, but from Daisy's brother, Julian, and he is also a gang lord. And it is so interesting to see all of that and to have like this extra aspect on top of the romance and on top of the romance between Daisy and Christian. Also the romance between Daisy and Christian like got me gasping, got me all those emotions, and I really loved Daisy as the main character. She was so interesting and I liked her even more than Magnolia. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on this book, definitely check out my vacation reading vlog. I'm also going to link it somewhere here. I never remember where. I really loved this one, but because of my experience it only got 4.5 stars. And then next I've read Fable by Adrienne Young. I've also read half of this book on vacation and the other half when I was back home. And this is about Fable, and she has been abandoned by her father on this island. And this island is like a very, I don't know, tough island to live at. Like, nobody really survives that island, but she did, and she tries to get off this island. She finds this ship where she can take passage, and there are a lot of different characters that are getting introduced. Very magical, but not really magical, because it isn't really a fantasy. It's only like a pirate or like kind of like a sailor story, but it still feels very magical because it's like in this ocean setting. There are all of these adventures happening, and Fable also has this little superpower, not really superpower. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm not gonna tell you what her small little power is. It was a really fun read. It was super adventurous and super gripping, and I never got bored for a second. There were some fantasy elements missing for me. I was a little bit disappointed that it wasn't a real pirate story, to be honest. Like, I was like, ooh, pirates, and then my boyfriend was like, but that doesn't sound like pirates. They were also always described as like these trading ships, so it's not really pirates, but it still has like that very piratey feel. If you like gaming and if you've played Sea of Thieves, it kind of really reminds me of that. My boyfriend used to play it, and yeah, I always watched him play it because I'm not really skilled at playing games. I only play cozy games. But yeah, it was really fun to watch and really fun to read this book and be reminded of that game. Oh yeah, and I rated this one 3.75 stars. I think I forgot to mention that. So, and now we have arrived in October. October was an even better reading month for me. Like, in September I've read 4 books, but in October I've read 5 books, which is a little more. I'm getting there at some point. Also, if you're enjoying this video, it would mean so much if you subscribe to my channel and like this video. Yeah, let's get into the books that I've read in October, and the first one being The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. And The Naturals is kind of like Criminal Minds, but with superpowers. It's about this girl who has the special ability to profile a person, but without even trying. Like, it's not really like she's looking at a person and she's analyzing this person, but she just has to look at this person and she basically knows a whole bunch about this person. And she's being recruited by the FBI to not really help with serial killer cases, but in the end she still does. But she lives with these other teenagers who also have this or a similar special ability. It's super interesting. It has a lot of plot twists. It was super fast paced. I honestly couldn't stop reading. Such a quick read as well. Like, I've read it in 5 hours, which is super fast for me. Most people read it in 4 or 4.5 hours. I read a little bit slower, so it took me a little bit longer, but you know, it was a really fun read and I had a blast reading it. But because it was so short, it still felt a little bit flat to me, even though it was filled with plot twists and with characters. In general, it was a really good YA story, but there were still some little things missing for me, so it only got 3.5 stars from me. Next, I've read Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. This book is about 2 twin sister witches, and when one of the twins dies, the other twin tries to find out who the killer was. And she's summoning a demon to find out who the killer was. It all goes from there, basically. But even though this premise sounded so interesting, there were a lot of things missing for me. It felt like to me that there were just not really many side characters, or at least nobody that was really relevant to the story except for the 2 main characters. And also because of that, it was so extremely focused on the main plot and to find out who the killer of the twin sister was. I was just missing so much in this book, and this book was a lot longer than The Naturals, and I felt like The Naturals had even more side characters and plot and side stories, and even though it had this main plot, it also had these many side plots, and with Kingdom of the Wicked it just didn't. It was just the main plot, and it was so focused on the main plot, and we got a little bit at the end of a little bit of romance, and I was honestly really mad. But the ending was really intriguing, and I definitely see potential for the next book. I think the second book could be a lot better and a lot more interesting, but Kingdom of the Wicked got 2.75 stars for me, because yeah, there were just a lot of things that could have been better. So, and next we have One Dark Window by Rachel Gillick, another extremely hyped book everywhere, on BookTok, on BookTube, everywhere. I listened to it on audiobook, so maybe that was the problem, but I was honestly very disappointed by this one. The premise of it also sounded so interesting. It's about this girl who has like this nightmare in her head, which is like the second voice always talking to her. And like we don't really know like who this nightmare is. And there are these cards which have these special powers, which are kind of like tarot cards, but they have these special powers. It was so all over the place, and especially with the audiobook, like there were so many side characters and I was so incredibly confused all of the time. I never really knew what really was going on. I don't know, like I kind of got a grasp of like the main story and like of the main 1 or 2 or 3 characters, but seriously, like for the first half of the book I was like, who is this and who is that and why are there so many names, and I was so overwhelmed by this. Yeah, maybe it was just my personal reading experience, maybe probably other people experienced it very differently, because a lot of people love this book. So it is an interesting story, but not perfectly executed in my opinion. So yeah, it only got a 2.5 stars for me. I then read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. I don't even know where to begin with this book. You can already tell I'm smiling. Yeah, this book made me feel so giddy and so incredibly cozy, and it was everything. It was super cottagecore and so dreamlike, and I don't know, I just really loved it. It's about this witch who has grown up as a witch. She is part of this secret society of witches, and they're not supposed to tell any living person on this earth that they're a witch. So our main character has always felt very lonely throughout her life, and she's never really had anyone in her life because she's always kept people at a distance. And then she's being hired by this guy from this mansion to help 2 young witches figure out their abilities, and there's this really cute love story. It's like this whole found family trope, and it's so cozy and so cute. There's so much character development in this book and so many amazing scenes, and these 2 little witches are also so cute. And yeah, it was just honestly the perfect read for Halloween time. I'm completely and utterly in love with the story. I wish it would have never ended, and I'm so excited for the next book that Sangu Mandana is releasing. I've rated it obviously 5 stars. It was absolutely fantastic, and if you're into cozy fantasy witchy stories, definitely check that one out. I'm sure you will love it. And yeah, also the writing style was fantastic. I forgot to mention that. We have almost reached the end. The last book that I've read in October is House of Furies by Madeleine Roux. I've read this for one of my upcoming reading vlogs, so yeah, if you want to see that reading vlog, make sure you're subscribed to my channel. I've never actually really heard about this book. It has been sitting on my shelves for years and years and years. I just never really picked it up because I haven't heard of it before. I didn't really think that it was any good, to be honest. I then picked it up on a whim during my last reading vlog, and yeah, this one is set in the 1800s. It's about this orphan girl trying to make a living on the street, but never really being able to get off the street and do anything really. But then this woman comes along and she's offering her a job at this mansion, and this is a really creepy mansion and really eerie and very spooky, and you don't really know what's going on in this mansion. This is also a YA gothic horror story, but in my opinion, like, it's also very enjoyable if you don't like YA books, because it honestly didn't really feel like a YA book, except for that the main character is a little bit younger. Basically, the premise of the story is that Every visitor who's staying in this mansion is not getting out of there alive. The only people who are surviving this mansion are the employees, and the visitors apparently have good reasons to be murdered. Yeah. Nothing is really as it seems in this book. You don't really know at the beginning what's going on. It didn't let me go. I was so enveloped in the story. The writing style was just absolutely amazing, and it was really, really creepy and really dark. The plot twist at the end had me gasping, literally. I was absolutely in shock. I just absolutely adored this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and yeah. So yeah, those were all of the books that I've read in September and October. There were a lot of great ones in there and a lot of disappointments as well. I'm actually pretty happy with the last 2 months, and I really hope that November is getting me even closer to my reading goals and is making me read even more. If you watched up until this point, it really means a lot that you did. I will see you in the next one. Bye!